line item 200,000, she said, I doubt that it's going to come in that much. But that's where you can find that detailed information.
It's within the cost estimate.
Right. If I can, for the memo, so this last sentence, which says reflecting the recommended site plan and program results in a minimum fundraising need of 19.8.
That way you're not saying
right.
target,
right.
because
Well,
what's the
right.
target?
The target is in the first
20 to
sentence.
25.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
It's just semantic.
No, nobody's going to send us home if we go beyond that.
So wait, so it's going to say a minimum
Well,
fundraising need of
so-
20 to 25?
Well, the first
Target.
I'd
on,
say a fundraising need of 20 to
No, we're talking, the 19.2 is the need, but the target is 20 to 25.
yeah, the first sentence of that 4th paragraph on page 3 of the memo.
Okay.
It reads, the CCAC, and then that parenthetical phrase is stricken. The CCAC is comfortable with a fundraising target of approximately 20 to 25 million. Then as you skip down to the last sentence, what I'm proposing is, it says, ... recommended site plan and program results in a minimum fundraising need of 19.8 million net of restricted funds.
We got a target of 20 to 25, but we can't build it unless we get 19.8.
Right. Although Steve,
I think
that's
that's
fine. A couple of aces up his sleeve. So is the committee comfortable?
Everybody okay with that?
Okay, there's one thing I can't find here, again, that I just saw a minute ago, so maybe you could tell me where it is, where there was a reference to council and staff, somebody deciding what the naming opportunities are.
Oh, that's in George's
That's in
memo.
George's memo.
It's item,
Okay, I have
item H.
the issue with that. I think that the fundraising group needs to be really thinking, there are ways to fundraise. Let's just talk about that a little bit. There'll be a pyramid that will be designed with different levels of donations. And part of that pyramid assignation, just in thinking, is there'll be naming opportunities, or could be naming opportunities associated with those different branches or leads or whatever like that. So I think that the fundraising need, that part needs to be done in conjunction with the council or the subcommittee of the council or 2 council liaisons that will come to fundraising meetings, so we can get that done. We're going to need that in 2 months.
Well, that's not what,
In order to start going out and asking for lots of money, I'm going to need to say to Harry.
What change do you want? Do you want him to change this, or what do you need?
I don't, I'm just commenting on the way it's worded and the process that should actually work.
You're suggesting that a subcommittee of the council tag on to the fundraising committee so that they can identify, yes, we're going to allow naming of this room or that room.
Take the suggestions and then go back and discuss it maybe with the council. We're going to have to do that fairly fast.
Sure. I know in another project I was involved in, the committee made a proposal to the board of directors
We're going to do that.
for
That's
that.
why I'm thinking that.
Perhaps the 2 council member liaisons here could assist with that.
I think I've already talked to both of them about maybe coming to work with us. I don't know if it's going to be as frequently as Portola Valley, but it'll be a lot. And yes.
I think that's fine.
But the intent of H was to make sure that this committee was looped into identifying, hey, we have a potential in the Reading Park area over here, this no longer Reading Park, to create a donor wall as we're going through the design process, and here's some feedback on that.
And just keep in mind that this committee includes the 2 council members.
Right.
I know, but I also, I think some of it's going to have to be talked about before the council.
Okay.
We need to have a full
You can have
strategy on that.
Okay, so at number 7, we can have a subcommittee, which is the liaison to the
It's not going to happen.
fundraising.
We're not going to have a subcommittee for this week. I don't think it's do that. So I'm just telling you that that's how it should work. Maybe it should be related because we can't do it that way. But it's going to have to be a work outside. Because we have to be very careful.
You don't want to change it, because you just want to call attention
I
to
just
that
want to
issue.
call attention to that.
I think Steve noted some of the wording here, it may be purposely ambiguous to allow for some flexibility on the part of both fundraising and the committee. So it's permissive rather than restrictive.
Now, and then I see the committee may be helping after the designs are far down the road. thinking about, well, what's the letter look like? What's the recognition actually gonna look like for A or B, or what's the bench gonna look like, or the tree, or whoever knows what it's gonna be. So I see that as something, again, to make a recommendation to the council, but I think that those names will be given to this group by the fundraising committee once we are lucky enough to have people.
I'm thrilled we're worried about this.
So am I.
That because we think it's time to be worried. Okay, any other comments on this before we call for a motion? Yeah.
Okay. I really don't want to throw a monkey wrench into this, but the only way that we've talked about the underground parking is the inclusion of the secured police parking, which drives the price to $17 million. And I have no idea how much the underground parking would be if the police parking were above ground as it is currently planned. But I am certain that it would be less than $17 million. And I think that this committee needs to know what that would be. Because, I consider it very relevant because of comments I've gotten from the community about how people view our current space as essentially a parking lot, and they are...
This existing...
Yeah, I mean, we heard that in all 6 of the community meetings.
Not the plan that we were presenting.
No, I'm not talking about the plan, I'm only talking about the plan that you guys have discussed with HMC, dealt with either underground parking that included the secured parking, which caused a significant upgrade to the structure of the underground parking, and therefore the cost, that option, versus an option where there's no underground parking. And the option of having unsecured underground parking as the only underground parking really wasn't discussed. And I don't know what that cost would be, but my review of the 6 meetings that we had, and I think I attended 4 of them, was that not universally, but there was a large majority of people that liked the idea of reducing above ground parking. Now, everybody wanted convenience parking, everybody. But, you know, right now we see a parking lot. So I'm really not trying to change this report, but I am raising an issue that I don't think has been addressed, which I consider important because I'm going to do everything I can do to support the committee to raise the money to do the underground parking, and there's a point at which you can't do that, right? Once we've gone, there's a point where you go past because of phasing and different things where once you've decided to go forward with this project and it doesn't include underground parking, you can't reverse that decision. So personally, I feel like this is an important issue. I've said that from when I first joined this committee. And I'm going to do everything I can to help raise the money to address that. And there might be a dollar number that's less than $17 million that could allow us to do underground parking that we don't currently know about. And is not addressed in the staff report because it hasn't been reviewed to my knowledge. Now maybe the budget committee did review it and I'm not aware of it, but that's an alternative that I think should be considered.
The budget committee didn't review it except in conceptual terms. And just speaking for my own opinion, not on behalf of the committee, I was astounded by the cost of the underground parking. It just blew me away.
Me too.
It felt like it was 4 or 5 times what it should have been. It was explained in 2 ways. One, there were extra things down there which we never got the full square footage on that were being built into it. So it was a bigger structure than it needed to be. And B, because I don't know which part of the police department, if it's just the emergency operations center or if other things too, the level of construction quality, or the structural ability had to be 1.5 times normal. And everything, including the garage, which just drove the price way up. And we didn't do any value engineering to, can we move that off the parking structure? Can the parking structure not be under, is it just the one room, is it the whole police department? We didn't do any of that. But separately, what I know is the way the site plan came back, it really is not gonna feel like it's heavily parked.
I actually have a comment.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I had a concern about underground parking and the overall monkey wrench, I have a monkey wrench approach to all of this, because if you step back and look at the plans as they are, and as I saw the plans with the parking lot as it is. To me, that was a non-green approach to what can be seen as a modern, new, really cool building that represents Atherton. And I'm concerned that if we're approaching it as the, a cost-sensitive building, which it needs to be, but if we're basing all of our decisions on that, I'm worried overall that we're going to be able to raise funds from people in this community because they won't be excited about it.
Because you would want to reduce the amount of parking or the amount of surface parking?
The amount of surface parking.
Okay.
I'm
So it
thinking that there are a
feels
lot
green, it
of
feels more
green,
rural about it?
yeah.
Okay.
And on top of that, I'm worried about the quality of the property when it's done and how we're going to sell that to people.
Yeah.
I think people around here expect top-notch everything. They work their whole lives to live here, and they have invested in their businesses and in their lives based on pretty big decisions about quality of life. And
Right.
so if
I
we're
get it.
representing those people in this building, I'm concerned that they might not get excited about it. If it's just I don't mean to use the word, well, if it's a mediocre building instead of a real statement about Atherton and its people.
I know, and then that could, we could, that's subjective, right?
Right.
And it could go back and forth between, too much parking looks non-Atherton. You could say an underground parking garage doesn't feel like Atherton.
Right, right.
That's all subjective, we get community outreach. The real question is, do we keep the option of an underground garage open? How long can you do it and what's the cost?
Well, we are keeping
Because you're
this
gonna
being
do-
open as one of the
It is
ornaments.
a decoration.
But to truly keep it open, when you hire an architect, they're gonna design 2 projects. And one's gonna sit on top of a concrete garage and one isn't. And they're gonna have 2 slightly different site plans. And you're gonna pay more money to do that. And when you go to the public, they're gonna be a little confused. But it's the only way, but you're gonna have to do that to fundraise.
Okay,
Because otherwise you're not gonna know what the price is.
can I make a suggestion? So we talked before about when would be an appropriate point to bring in a project manager consultant.
Yeah.
Maybe what we're talking about is before we get to the design phase, we need to make this decision. I really think, it's a great idea. I would love to see underground parking.
But you have to design it.
But you've got to design it. So if we have a project management firm that's engaged from the beginning, and one of their tasks is help us really figure out what can we build a parking garage for. We don't want the all singing, all dancing version that we had before. We want to be able to park some cars under there, that's it.
What's in it?
Yeah,
What's in the parking garage?
right.
That's an architect.
Yeah, well,
And that gets into space needs analysis and everything else.
well,
And how does it lay out with the column structure of the building and what's the,
yeah, but I think that the sort of idea that I had was that an underground garage, my guess is that you could probably build an underground garage for about $200 a foot. It's about 25,000 square feet. It should be around 4 or 5 million, which is sort of what you were indicating. So if we bring a cost consultant as part of this project management team at the beginning, and they say it's going to be, to pick a number, it's going to be 5 million, not 17 million. And then, it's still within the range that we indicated of 20 to 25 million. I would say at that point, the committee might say, okay, we feel sufficiently confident to go ahead and have the design team start to design the building with an underground garage. We then price it out as we're going forward.
Yeah.
And if a catastrophe happens and it ends up being 17 million, then we have to redesign. But I don't think you can go ahead with 2 designs. I think you've got to have one design, and then you've got to know at the beginning.
yeah, no, I tend to, I think, Clive, you're talking and help me think about it. 'Cause, it's not hard to go to just a garage designer and say, here's the dimensions of the building we have on the plan today. And for 10 grand, can you give us a schematic design for that parking garage, or 5 grand, 2 grand? It's not, there's no detail in it, it's, right? And then getting somebody, a cost estimator, to give you a general price. But at 1.5, the strength level or something.
Can Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
In the budget committee, ad hoc committee, did you talk with HMC and their cost estimator as to why it came in so high?
Because the cost estimator was never available to our committee. But it was bigger than just the parking spaces, and we never really got that breakout of square footage. And they had to build it to this 1.5, you know, if structural code is 1.0, we had to go to 50% more beefy structure. So instead of a, you know, I'll make it up, instead of a 7.5 earthquake, it'll go to a 9. Whatever.
Because you're building it over a garage.
Well, no, actually,
No.
the essential building requirement is associated with my colleague to my right. Because he just likes things nicer. No,
Yeah.
as police departments, fire departments, and communications facilities, but not City Hall, no offense to her.
Yeah.
Has to be built to that standard. And so the garage, as it was shown where it would fit without having to tear out trees, because that's one of the other issues is where on the site can you excavate to go underground without tearing out trees.
Well,
It was then the podium for the structure above, which was the required essential building. So it was the foundation of the police department. That's what drove up the cost.
well, it was my understanding
Steve's
from the
right.
public outreach committees, meetings, that not a lot of public people really wanted to park underground.
Correct.
They want
Right.
convenience parking, surface parking, and if you put staff parking underground, police parking underground, you know, and the police holding parking, right, their yard, police yard underground, that's fine. But, you know, as a resident coming to the post office or coming to the building department, I don't want to go down and wind my way like the Public Medical Foundation and get, you know. And then the other thing is the digging of the garage really starts to dictate how the building is, you know, above, right? Because you have this kind of footprint.
If the garage is the foundation
Ah.
for the building, there may be alternatives. And so that's kind of what I was thinking is, just like the program you're going to be looking at at the beginning of the design, you could charge the architect with, give us a few studies of where else some underground parking.
Can I make a suggestion? We can have more discussion, but I have a suggestion which I think might get serious. So later in this meeting, we're going to name some new subcommittees, and one of them that is probably going to be named is called Project Management Committee. It thinks through how does the project actually be designed, when do you bring subs on, when do you bring other engineers on, how do you march through the steps. That committee would be well suited to come back with a recommendation on exactly this topic. How do you maintain the option to have an underground garage so we can go fundraise for it quickly enough that it doesn't materially impact the design schedule for the whole project? And rather than debate, do we want it or not? I think everyone said if you can afford it and staff parks underground, it's a good thing. That was universal.
Right.
And then the real question is, and I don't think anybody here doesn't want a parking garage if we can afford it and it's like the
Well, it's
project.
got to be designed
It's got to look
beautifully.
right. Yeah.
It's got to look right.
Yeah, and the way that HMC presented on the site plan made sense. It's a little easier to circulate on site without the dip for the parking garage, but it wasn't bad, right? It wasn't
Yeah.
horrible.
I didn't like it.
You didn't like it, okay. Well, we could,
Yeah.
well, then that's a different question.
Well, yeah.
That's a different issue if we want to
Well, I think
recommend that.
that's a
or not.
design question. I think that ultimately comes up to a design question with the architect, how it would be designed in.
Yeah, so that would come back to how does it get designed in, but it's moot if we don't raise the money.
Right.
And so
But
the
I think,
project
I just don't think
management.
that it's been vetted enough. I think we received this $17 million figure and we said, oh, it's too much, throw it out. You know, baby with the bathwater kind of thing.
So we could have a process to allow it to live a longer, have another day, right? To see another sunrise, or many, and come back with, how does that work? What's the time frame? Which can be used with donors as a deadline. It doesn't happen if you don't step up by June 1st.
Yeah.
July 1st, whatever it is. It can be a good way to get money.
It
And
needs to
that's
be
why I
vetted
brought
more.
this up.
Yeah, no,
I brought it
that's
up for
perfect.
two
Nice
reasons.
job.
But I think that's a way we could do it, and then it comes down to how do you design it in a way that people are okay with, which is that's architecture.
Look, The design that HMC came in with included an underground garage. My point, and there's plenty of underground garages that are built. It's not hard to figure out what the costing is. I've talked to people, they told me $25,000 a car
Parking
space.
Yeah.
That, for 200 parking spaces, which I can't believe we're talking about, that's $5
No,
million.
but it gets more expensive with less. But
Well,
it's only
okay,
one
but-
level undergrade, so it should be
Right.
reasonable.
And whatever it is, it's gotta be
But
designed well.
it's not because
there are
the
so many
garage is
parking
under the
garages
building.
underground
That's
that
not
are
the
so
problem.
bad.
So do you want to, knowing that we're gonna bring that back up under subcommittees.
Okay.
Is there any further discussion on the proposed document to council? Anybody have any further commentary? Is it time to call for a motion on the document for council?
I'm not gonna make the motion either.
I thought we made the motion.
No, not to approve it. So, am I allowed to make a motion, Mr. Chair?
No, one of us, I'll make it.
Okay, because it's a little complicated with what got changed.
Well, but if somebody just picked, thank you. We've got record of what's been changed.
Would you like me to go over that? Thank you. In the memo that you have, which had parenthetical comments, in item 3, the one word that was changed was the word architectural was stricken and the word design is in, and the additional comments have come out from 5 and Steve. In 4, again, the additional comment from Steve has come out, and 5 has come out. Then on page 3, the comment from Dee Dee does not need to be addressed, as I understand it. And then in the first sentence, it now reads, the CCAC is comfortable with a fundraising target of approximately, or maybe it should say fundraising range,
Okay.
rather than target, range of approximately 20 to 25 million. Then there's two sentences, and then it jumps down to the last full line. Program results in a minimum fundraising need of 19.8 million net of restricted library and building funds. And then, I'm sorry, one other change. This will be an exhibit attached to and referenced in, for number 4, it'll say, see Exhibit X, which is the new charge for the Civic Center Advisory Committee.
You're making a correction about the civic center, but the membership.
Well, yes, and thank you.
It's 7 plus 2.
Well, I was trying to think of how to address you in this
Once
case.
a mayor, always a mayor.
Right. Councilmember Lewis.
I love it when you call me Madam Mayor.
Which I usually do.
I know.
And it now says item E, at the end of the first sentence, there's a comma, and then the word including to coordinate public outreach and collect resident input, comma, during the design phase. And then in the last paragraph, it says, the Civic Center Advisory Committee consists of up to 7 members plus 2 liaison city council members.
Is that your motion? Your motion in that?
Yes.
Do I have a second?
Yes.
That's Clive. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? Thank you. Okay, the next item is staff reports. The master plan committee, we don't have, that was, I think that, if I remember, it was Paul, myself, and used to be Greg, didn't it? Who was on the master plan committee? No. Who was on that one? No, I'm thinking of a different one. That's, well, it's not here and it's
The
not.
master plan
Has nothing to
committee was
report.
Clive, Paul.
Has nothing to report.
Wasn't it? Yeah, you were on it.
You say no.
No.
Report.
Library ad hoc
Would you like
committee.
the committee at some point should disband some of these.
Yes, I think that's a good idea.
We can disband the master plan committee. Is that, are we
Yeah,
We're
in
done.
favor of that?
yes.
Yeah.
With the master plan has been approved, so it's, okay, right? It's gone,
Um,
disbanded.
Well, it's not been accepted yet at the council.
yeah.
But the work of the committees.
Okay, got it, yes. Subject to council approving the master plan, we request to disband the master plan committee. Okay. Library ad hoc committee,
They're gonna have more work.
Rick, nothing?
Wait, there's no report.
Outreach ad hoc committee has nothing to do right now, do they?
No.
Will there be advertising by that committee when the fundraising's occurring or no?
No.
No, okay.
Actually, if I may just bring up a concept, there is funding in the cost estimate, although it was reduced from the initial amount from HMC, for graphics support. So I just wanted to remind the outreach committee that if you wish to have either material created or certainly any material that they've used in their presentations, just let me know, and HMC will be happy to provide that.
And that can be made available to the third-party development group.
Right.
It seems to me that there probably will be another outreach opportunity with the design phase. So I would just leave your committee,
Looking
nothing
forward
to
to
do
it.
right now.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Okay, and
Love to have a party.
the budget ad hoc committee doesn't have any report except that this memo reflects what the.
Actually, I have a question for the budget ad
Yes.
hoc committee. So on Mike's report to the city council, I happened to see at the very, very back page, it mentions enclosures, one of which is the 2614 cost estimate, which is this big document that was like,
Right.
hundreds of millions of dollars.
It's 30, that was the 31.8 million. If you have an old one, the version that I was going to forward was the one that had the final $31.8 million number.
The other one.
Okay.
So if the date is wrong, I'll correct it, but I'm
The
actually,
prior draft copies are sort of eliminated.
actually I'm looking at one now on my email, and I'm looking at the date, and it's February 4th. So I think there's it's maybe a 6th, it may be a February 19th, but I have the version that matches the amount in the memo.
So you're just gonna double check and make sure
Yeah,
that
I
that
will.
date's correct?
Okay, okay, number 6, project schedule. Should we do can we skip to 7 and do the formation of other ad hoc committees and then talk about project schedule? That'd be okay?
Did the chair.
Okay, does anybody have a problem with that?
No?
Okay, so the formation of other ad hoc committees, Clyde suggested, and I agree with him, I think it would be a good idea to have a project management subcommittee, which his role would be to meet with staff to think through who should be involved at the design, in the design phase of the project. What, you've heard a lot of us, already talked about it, but basically what other professionals are involved at that phase. And it would also include this concept of how can you march down the road, still keeping open the idea of an underground garage in an effective way.
And for how long?
For how long? Yeah. And so how does anybody not think that's a good idea to have that subcommittee? And then who, we can have, I just wanted to see who would like to be on it, who's interested in that.
Well, I would suggest that you and Clive and somebody else with background in that should be on it, and otherwise it's
Yeah.
we're all talking, we can all add something.
My instinct is that Rose would be a very valuable person given her background, but I don't know how you feel about Rose, if you have time, or if there's somebody else who says, I really want to do that.
Does Bill want?
Phil, you Sure. No, okay, Rose, I think you'd be. So there would be the three of us, it'd be you, me, and.
That's good
Clyde.
committee.
Does that work for everybody? Okay, so that committee exists, there we go. Now back to project schedule for the.
Well, can I ask, I don't know if we need a committee, but I think that there is a purpose that this committee could help the fundraising with. And that is, in Portola Valley, the three people involved that did all the work, or most of the work, did an exercise of what is great about this project. Let's use words that we can envision the project doing. And I think it would work, that visioning process in a bigger group would really be helpful if we could just come up with phrases or words, spend half an hour and just kind of let stuff fly around so that we have exciting things to use, because we are going to be excited and we're not going back once we start this. And we want to use the same phrases and terms and words for everything we talk about, for education, for policing, for whatever it is, greenness, so that people buy into the concept and go, great, I love it.
Is this a subcommittee that comes up with
Well, I don't know. that
Because there
it's
is the outreach committee, I don't know if that would be a
Well,
natural
I
thing for
really
them.
want everybody's help in this brief. So for our next meeting, if we could have an agenda item, I don't think we need a subcommittee for this. I think once we've got the language down, the fundraising committee's gonna have to work with this, all right? And we will. And people that are helpful will be going to be called in to help us with different
Your branding.
PR, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
I would
So,
really like to see Paul involved in that.
Yeah, so, you know,
So the benefit of a subcommittee is you can go offline and do net searches and see what other towns use.
I don't think we can use a subcommittee even of this committee. I'm just guessing what I'm gonna be told by our city attorney. I think we have to be very careful, whereas we can come, I think, in vision. I think we can use vision words and talk about what is the vision of this building and this plan here. But I think beyond that, we don't know.
Aren't we gonna want that for our public outreach?
The public outreach is,
When we have our design meetings.
will be design meetings. At that point, we will really.
She's saying a plan
We've
for
gone
financial
beyond-
fundraising.
We're gonna go beyond you, we'll have gone beyond you, and we can take words from what we're using already.
She's
I
saying
think it would be a
materialistic.
good exercise for the whole
I
committee to
agree.
do,
I want more people's
to
brains
get
running
everybody
less
involved in,
people's
I mean, this is visioning.
Yeah.
This committee's been involved with this project for a year now, so everybody has a pretty good concept about it, and each of us have been involved in different pieces of it. I think that kind of a
That's
sort
good
of
mean too.
Yeah,
branding and visioning
Mhm.
exercise as a whole is a good thing.
I think that's a really important
So
thing.
Teresa, can that make the agenda for our next meeting? Brandon, project Brandon.
Mhm.
Well, I use the word vision, don't use the word branding, I think vision is.
I mean, in a lot of ways, it's characterizing how we feel about Atherton.
Right,
Because this
Exactly
is
what it is.
right,
really Atherton tomorrow.
right.
Let me ask, would the committee like any materials? HMC is still under contract to us. They have done many of these kinds of projects with other people, and so they may have examples from other communities. Would you like me to ask them for some of those examples?
They also can draw
That's
upon
great.
the public
They
outreach.
said that
they
they
did.
would help us do that.
Well,
I think
what I
that's
really
fantastic.
like is somebody to come and draw pictures and
Well-
put all the words on paper, but we're gonna do it ourselves if we can.
They can do that, but that's money.
Happy to draw.
You know,
Okay.
Do they have time for that in the contract?
if we're just asking them for documents, they'll be happy to do that. And then should you decide to hire them, then there'd be a
We don't
proposal.
wanna hire them. I think we can do this with
Sure.
one of us acting as scribe and the rest of us just.
Whiteboard it.
Yeah.
But I just didn't know if you want any examples, that's all.
Yeah,
Sure, yeah.
examples are always good.
Wonderful. Any other ad hoc committees we think need to be formed at this time? Okay, seeing none, then we're going back to item 6. I'm gonna guess, Bert, you're gonna leave this one.
Yes, I just wanted to give you some kind of an update, because I know you're concerned. The next activity after this committee is that on March 19th, staff is going to be making a presentation to council with HMC, also making a PowerPoint presentation. Essentially, you've seen the memo, asking council to then accept the master plan and moving forward with the environmental work. The town planner expects to have an RFP available for council approval to go out and solicit proposals. There'll be, we'll have to have some kind of process which would involve one or more of you on the panel to select a consultant for the environmental work.
This is the EIR.
Yeah, you're right. And the reason for that, I'll take most of you back, with the exception of Christina, wasn't here at the time, which is that because that building as part of the library is more than 50 years old, the law says it has to be viewed as historic, even though there's potentially historic, there's no plaque or anything on it, but it has to be analyzed, and that's kind of the main reason it triggers the EIR. So she'll be going to council for that on the 19th. And assuming going back to council in May with approval and selection of a consultant and approval of a contract. I have to still work with George in terms of timing, but we also have to go to council in terms of funding. Hey, what's it going to cost? Where's the money going to come from for this phase of the work? Not for the construction yet. That'll be a different issue. Lisa suggests that environmental review process, including the circulation, the time for public comment, the hearings, whatever, is about an 8-month process. So that takes us till like February next year.
Does that include the summer being the open part of the public comment process? 'Cause that I think is-
No, because probably the first 4 months is professional work and collecting information. So the public review process will be after that. Then, depending on what your project management committee comes up with, then staff would be crafting one or more requests for proposal for professional services. And the difference,
Are we waiting for the EIR to hire?
no,
Okay,
no,
okay.
that's why I'm saying
They can run concurrently.
Yeah, they should run
concurrently
concurrent, yeah.
and well before the end.
Yeah,
And the difference, much like with the architectural selection that you did before, professional services, which includes construction and project management, surveying, legal, auditing, and a few others, those are selected on a qualifications-based process, as you did with the architects. Assuming that we go a traditional design bid build, the construction contract, however, is low bid. That's not discretionary. You don't base it on quality. You can do pre-qualification. So I would see the professional services, project management, whether it's before or concurrent or after architectural design, beginning and going to council probably May or June, somewhere around there, for the authorization to solicit that RFP. That can come in. Again, the committee would be involved in the selection of those, however the timing works out on those. And if it's August and you say, no, let's push it over because there aren't enough of us till September, so be it. It affects the schedule.
and you're talking about CCAC.
Yes.
And to review what? Because we might want to talk
We'll
about.
review the RFPs and then review all the submissions, much like you've done before.
There might be some things that the CCAC would want to delegate to a project management sector.
Which is fine. I'm just trying to give you an idea of what's going to
Maybe
be
you could,
happening.
maybe you could prepare that for next.
I'll
you could
come up
work
with a
us on
schedule
recommendation.
based on what you do in the council action on the 19th. I'll have, give you an example schedule where those pieces are in terms of the council's approval of the RFP, an inclusion of a committee or subcommittee on the review, selection, back to council for authorization of contract,
Yeah.
and then roughly how much time that process is going to take. There's nothing in there about fundraising. That's a parallel thing, and it's not something I'm going to include. So just to give you an idea where the milestones are going forward over roughly the next year, the cost estimate, and again, because HMC had to assume some things, the cost estimate says construction beginning July of 15. Now, the reason they put in some date in there is they have a cost escalation factor, and